Ant-Man issue 1 heads to the Florida Everglades, where AIM load up their altered drugs into the boats, ready to distribute them amongst the populace. Soon, the AIM henchmen are attacked by a swarm of dragonflies as the drugs are shrunk down and carried off by them. Soon, there is a huge explosion in the water as the giant Stinger and Ant-Man arrive. Stinger smashes up the boats, swearing as she does it, but Scott warns her of her language, telling his daughter that he doesn't want to be partnered with someone who is comfortable with making their adventures rated R. One of the AIM soldiers asked to be put down by Scott, since when he talks with his hands a lot and it's making him sick. Scott decides to do so, apologizing to the soldiers, despite Cassie telling him not to apologize to the drug dealers. Later, the cops arrive to arrest the AIM members, and a reporter arrives as well, wanting to take Ant-Man and Stinger's picture with his phone for his report. Scott lets him do so, since he thinks that this will lead to big things. However, on Monday morning, he finds the article and picture are so small they are barely on the page. Scott is upset since he isn't getting any work from this, and that's a problem since the only apartment he can afford right now is the anthill he is currently in. He slaps the ant eggs he is laying on, causing the ants to become angered, picking up the eggs and leaving, despite Scott telling them that he wasn't going to hurt them. Pam, the ant who invited him to stay, says that she is sad now since she must kick him out. Suddenly, Cassie's voice booms through the anthill, so regrowing, Scott meets with his daughter, who is confused as to the address Scott gave her. Scott comes clean and says that his address is technically the anthill in front of the house of the address he gave her, but he had no other choice, since a life of guarding the galaxy and fighting ice giants doesn't pay anything. He wants to know what the problem is and learns that it's because Cassie has someone who was looking for him. Cassie introduces him to Sandra Stully, Scott acting like living in the anthill is just an experiment he is running. Sandra is there to buy Scott's services, making the hero recount exactly what he does thanks to the Pym particles. She reveals that she is part of the Florida State Beekeepers Association and their bees have gone missing, and she hopes Scott might know where they are, since he can talk to bugs. The disappointed Scott says that he will consider her offer, but Sandra says that she can pay him, which might be important to him in his current state. Scott doesn't know if he can do it since he's got other things on the back burner, but Sandra says that she rode across Florida in a bus for this and doesn't want it to be in vain. Cassie yells at him since he's living in an anthill, leaving and telling Scott that she has a mother and stepfather who both work and have a home, unlike him. Scott takes the job, learning that they need to ride the bus to Johnson County. However, Scott decides to take his flying ant. He meets with the beekeepers, and despite their concerns that Ant-Man won't be of much help, Scott manages to use his helmet's powers to contact a single bee scout. He learns that the bees are close and, shrinking down, rides the scout bee towards a small cave. He learns from the scout that the Yellows fled to protect Hive 1, and entering the cave, Scott soon learns what Hive 1 is, the Nazi supervillain Swarm, a being whose consciousness is spread out between thousands of bees and who can control bees within a 3-mile radius. Scott tells the villains that he needs to give the bees back, but Swarm says that he needs them all as he attacks Scott. Scott says that the bees are there against their will, proving it when the bees come to protect Scott from the villain, covering Scott and forming a type of exosuit, which helps Scott smash the villain into pieces. He grabs Swarm, telling his bee friends to grab their friends and escape, which they do, leaving Swarm in a weakened state. The villain calls Ant-Man a fool since he needed the bees so he would be strong enough to stop them. Scott wonders who they are and soon learns of Vesper, Thread, and Tusk, other beings made out of bugs, as they arrive, confronting Ant-Man and Swarm. Ant-Man issue 1 was a funny yet interesting beginning to a new chapter in the life of Scott Lang. I'm enjoying what Zeb Wells is setting out here, with Scott effectively being homeless and forced to do work that is seemingly menial labor, and it turns out to be a little bit more than what it seems. I like Scott teaming with his daughter as well. That was very fun to see, and it's great to see their relationship is being kind of strained by Scott's poor life choices, like living in an anthill. It adds that little bit of drama to the book, and hopefully we get to see Stinger a little bit more throughout this series. I'm looking forward to seeing what these new villains are exactly and how they will test Scott and his powers. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5 out of 10.